Hi, Matthew Moody here, Penrith&Solway candidate for Reform UK. I'm recording this quick video because I had a constituent send me a very interesting video from Neil Oliver, and it was about the whole capturing of democracy. We'll try and get a link to it somewhere below so you can go and look at the video itself. It's very, very interesting. And a number of questions came from it because it was about the current general election, the party political system as it stands right now, and the fact that most MPs are beholden to something that isn't you, the constituent. And that's what I really wanted to talk about. So, questions. First question is, what is the party system and how did it come about? So, obviously, British Parliament's been around for 150 odd years, and before parties such as Labour, Tory, Lib Dems, etc., came about, it was very much about factions, people grouping together, deciding what to do, how to push things through, how to get new laws installed, etc. Then came the creation of the Conservative Party and also the Liberal Party, which were the biggest parties for some time, and then the Labour Party came along later on. Now, what's interesting is this kind of system of basically political parties effectively meant that rather than say people of Penrith and Solway elected me as their representative to send me to Parliament to effectively focus on their behalf, fight for issues on their behalf, and make sure that their interests were represented, what it actually meant is that it's the party's interests that are being represented. And this kind of move from representing the people to representing the party is where we are today in this kind of, I guess, two-party system. It's either Labour or Conservatives in government. Labour, Conservatives in government. And right now, as a lot of the electorate are finding, they're basically two sides of the same coin. They have exactly the same policies, slightly different nuances, pretty much the same. So that was the first question that came to mind. The second one is, do MPs have to sign a contract if they stand for a party? Now, I don't know how it's set up with the other parties. I can only speak from my experience with Reform UK, but effectively, for me to stand for Reform UK, I had to apply, had to go through some screening, had to have various interviews with different members of the senior management team, had to attend some training as well. And when I'd gone through all of that, I was then allowed to stand as a candidate. Now, in terms of signing any contracts, I haven't signed any contracts per se. I have signed things such as NDAs and training documents that obviously I've been privy to, but I haven't had to sign a contract per se to stand for a party. What I have signed is that I will effectively represent the party to the best of my ability, and obviously not try and bring the party into disrepute. But that's really integral, I guess, in terms of anybody standing for a particular party, because there are certain policies that the party is pushing, and we as candidates would generally be expected to be on board with them to some degree because it's the party overall pushing them. However, another question that came up is, why did I stand for Reform UK versus, say, an independent? And the simple reason for that is because the current system in this country is deeply unfair. And you may have heard of this thing called proportional representation. Right now, our system is first past the post. So what this means is that we have an election. There's typically about 70,000 people in a particular constituency. The electorate go out to vote. Depending on the number of people that vote will depend on how many votes are cast. And then it's the person that has the most votes that gets elected as the MP. So even though, and you've seen this before in elections previously, someone could win by as little as 150 votes, and it has happened in marginal seats. The person that came second will have nothing to show for what they've done. They will not get elected into Parliament to represent anybody, and then they'll just carry on their way. Now, proportional representation effectively means that it is a combination, a culmination of all the votes that decides who gets elected and who gets sent to Parliament. So, for instance, we at Reform UK feel very strongly that we will capture 15% plus of the vote, maybe even as high as 20%. In some seats, maybe even higher than that. However, how many actual MPs will we end up with? We don't know at this stage because, as I said, the figures change. There are certain seats where people are polling higher than us, and also the way in which the system is run means that you could end up with, as happened in the 2019 election, we got about 5 million votes for the Brexit Party at that stage and had one MP elected. The SNP, my understanding is, had about 2 million votes and had about 40 MPs elected. So the system is grossly unfair, and certainly proportional representation would make that a lot easier, because it would mean that essentially the share of the vote depends how many MPs you get to send. If, say, you had 15% share of the vote and you had 100 MPs going, then 15 of those MPs should then go for your particular party. So that's the main reason, really, why I decided to stand for Reform UK. Firstly, because I like their policies. I thought they were common sense. I thought they were working on behalf of the people and not just working in their own interests. And it's interesting that Neil Oliver in his video talks a lot about that in terms of, well, who are these MPs actually representing? They certainly aren't representing me or you. They're representing their own interests or their party's interests first. So for me, I really wanted to stand with Reform UK because I believed in their policies. And I also believe that with the party structure behind me, certainly, because this is my first foray into running for Parliament, I felt I would get some support, how to, effectively work with the general public, how to find volunteers, that type of thing, how to campaign, because it isn't something I've necessarily done before. I've lobbied government before in various guises, but not necessarily gone out and said, please, will you vote for me? Because I think I'll make a bigger difference to your life than Joe, Bob, whoever it is that's standing against me. So another question. Can you defoliate at any time if the party try and make you vote in a way that you don't feel aligned with? Well, the great thing about Reform UK is there will be and is no whip system. Now, what is the whips? Essentially, the whips, which they have in Parliament, are I guess you call them the policemen, or even the bully boys. They tell you what to vote and how to vote and when to vote. And they're meant to whip you in line to make sure that if the party wants you to vote against this particular piece of legislation, they will make you essentially vote against that piece of legislation. And as we've seen in the past, what has often happened is if an MP doesn't vote the way that they want them to, they often have the whip removed. So then they're kind of not part of the party anymore. They're an independent. So the great thing I also liked about Reform is that they're not going to have a whip system. Every MP that is elected for Reform UK is entitled to vote the way that they feel and the way that their conscience makes them feel. And also, I think one of the things that we have sadly got away with, we've almost forgotten about, and this is one of the things that probably infuriates me the most, is as an MP, you should be representing the wishes of your constituents. You should be representing the interests, the needs and desires of your constituents. And what that means is you should be voting against legislation that is not in any interest of your electorate, but also, and I firmly believe this, you should be getting them involved, find out, well, what is their opinion? And certainly, if I was elected to Parliament on your behalf, I will be very much looking to create some kind of forum, probably online because it's easy, where people can feed in their views and concerns on certain legislation and issues going through Parliament, because I actually want to hear from you as to what your thoughts are, your concerns, your questions are on the subject, not just decide, well, I'm the MP, so I know everything, I'm just going to vote for this. Obviously, I will always have a view and an opinion, and I'm happy to discuss that with anybody and justify my reasons why and illustrate why I think that way. But I also feel it's worthwhile getting on board your opinion and what you think, because after all, as an MP, I'm meant to be representing you, not the party, and certainly not what some whip may or may not tell me to do. So, as I said, Reform UK, no whips. So, when we become the main opposition, and we will, there will be no whips in place. We'll be free to make our own decisions and vote the way that we feel fit. Now, another question that does keep coming up and comes up quite a lot is, why do people keep talking about Reform UK being a limited company when both the Conservatives, the Labour, and the Lib Dems have listings on Companies House? There's Dun and Bradstreet, all local councils are limited companies, etc. I don't actually know the reason why this comes up, apart from a couple of reasons that come to mind. First of all, Reform UK is a very young grassroots party. It was established quickly after the Brexit Party. It came out of the remnants of the Brexit Party. And at that time, the major shareholders in there were Richard Tice, Nigel Farage, and some other people. And I think what essentially has happened is this grand project, this 10-year project was formed and created with the main aim to getting candidates up and running and ready to run the next general election, to say to Westminster, to say to the elites, to say to the establishment that enough is enough and there has to be an alternative to that. So what I feel that will happen in the future is the constitution of the party, the way the party is governed, the way that we operate, make decisions will change for sure as the party grows and develops. And that's certainly going to happen. But obviously right now we're fighting a general election campaign. We are facing daily abuse and barrage from all kinds of people across the spectrum. And I think that now is not the time to start looking into, well, how is the limited company created and how does it work, etc. So for me, I would say that all of the other parties have some kind of limited company structure. A lot of the other parties have branches, which we don't right now, but it's something that we'll be looking to explore in the future because obviously branches give you support at a local level. But for now, I would say the limited company question is almost it's a deflection. It's a way of saying, oh, well, because you're limited and Nigel owns a lot of the shares, that basically you have to do what he says. Well, no, that's not true. As a Reform UK MP, you're free to make your own decisions. And you're free to vote the way that your conscience allows and also what your constituents are saying to you. So from my perspective, that's how I will be approaching this if I'm elected as your MP. So if you've not checked out Neil's video, do go and check it out. It's very interesting. It talks a lot about the failure of democracy and how it's been swamped and essentially amalgamated into this kind of party system, and also how a lot of the things that happen right now are actually aided and abetted by the establishment, which I do believe to be true too. So if you do want change and you want something different to be happening, then please do vote Reform UK. This is Matthew Moody, candidate for Penrith and Solway, wishing you a great day. See you soon. Bye-bye.